First live stream of 2026, and it's my first live stream in a long time. It's been about 4 weeks since I did a stream, but it's good to be back, and I'm going to be back in a full-time upload schedule now. You can expect daily videos, and whenever I don't upload a video, you can expect a live stream. So we're back full-time, and it's going to be an interesting year. 2026 is going to be, in my opinion, very interesting, very volatile and unpredictable. So there's going to be a lot of money to be made, and we're going to talk about that in today's live stream. We're also going to look at the stock market as it opens. It's going to be opening very shortly here. So we're going to see how the S&P 500 opens and see how that affects Bitcoin. As whenever the S&P opens, as of late, Bitcoin seems to have a major volatile move. We're going to discuss the Venezuela situation and how that may or may not affect markets. There's been a lot of talk about that. And we're going to look at some of the best altcoin opportunities for the month of January, because I am in some longs. I've told you guys very transparently that I sold my spot portfolio. My long-term portfolio is gone for altcoins, apart from BTC. I have a long-term position in Bitcoin, but all of my long-term positions in altcoins are gone, and I'm just trading this market because the long-term investing, in my opinion, presents a huge risk with altcoins as of right now, because Bitcoin lost the 50-week moving average, and I've been very, very clear about that. Since we lost the 50-week moving average, I believe we are in some form of a downtrend until we essentially break above it. And if you watch my video from today, I went through it very clearly that pretty much every time Bitcoin loses its 50-week moving average on a clear close, it really struggles to get back above it, and it usually takes years before Bitcoin gets back above the 50-week moving average. So that has to be your base case if you're someone who goes based off probabilities and based off trends. And you know the saying, the trend is your friend until it ends. That is very much the case here. And I'm willing to take the risk of being in stables and being in trades as opposed to being in a huge long-term portfolio, and then we potentially come up to 100K here and then reject and then come down to the 60s. I don't want to take that risk. People are saying the mic's going in and out. Mic's going in and out. Could people just confirm in the chat if the microphone is okay? It's been a while since I streamed, so there may be some issues, but if they persist, I can always change the mic. Mic is good. Okay, Omar, if you could just tell me if it goes out, that would be really helpful. But where was I? Yeah, so I have the mindset that we have to, be macro bearish until proven otherwise, and I don't believe we've been proven otherwise just yet. We could even rally up to 100K, 101K, and that's still expected by me. In fact, I'm in a bunch of longs right now. I just closed a long in great profits on IP, almost 50% profits, and I used no leverage. Guys, don't feel obligated to always use leverage. You don't have to use leverage on a long. You can just do 1x leverage, which means no leverage essentially. So don't always feel obligated to use leverage just because you're in a short-term position. Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you don't want to take that risk. So just closed it around 50% profits. And XPL is another one I'm up a lot on. This is another long position I'm up really nicely on. I got into that one around 12 cents. But yeah, I have to have that base case, because otherwise I'm making myself open for huge potential damage, which I don't want to allow to happen, right? You got to be cautious. You got to protect yourself. So, like I said, I believe we're going to make a lower high. I think this probably is the complacency shoulder here, to be quite frank. And I've been calling for a move up to the 50-week for some time now, ever since we lost it. I said, we will come back up to it, and there'll be some good trade opportunities that present themselves on that rally up to the 50-week. And some altcoins will pump even more than what you'd expect on a lower high. But that has to be the base case until proven otherwise, because it's happened every time, guys. It happened in 2021 or after 2021 when we lost it. So we lost it, we came down, people were scared, we came back up, people thought the bull run was back on. I did not, because I saw what happened historically. We had a slight close above the 50, but it wasn't convincing enough. And then that is when the real bear market happened. I think that's when Luna happened, maybe. All the other stuff. FTX came in a bit further on. That's when the real bear market happened. And the same exact thing pretty much happened after the 2017 bull run. We topped Q4, just as we do every cycle. We came down. We got a bounce off the 50. Then when we lost it, we could not get back above it. We attempted. That was your lower high. That was your get out opportunity if you missed the top. And then we really started the bear market and we came down to 3K. So you had the chance to sell around 8.3K. And then we went down to 3K. Same thing happened, like I said, in 2022. You had the chance to sell at 46K. 46K was your potential exit on the lower high. We then came down to 15K. Now, I don't think we're going to have as brutal of a bear market this time around if we get another rejection here. But it's still going to be quite brutal, right? Especially if you're holding alts. So maybe we move up here in the coming weeks, coming days and weeks, the way it's looking, up to 100K, there or thereabouts. Could even be 103K. Rally up to 100K, then come down and test that 200 moving average at some point in 2026. Seems like that is on the cards right now. It really does. And for me, the quicker we can get this over and done with, the better. Like ideally, we rally up to the 50 this month, and then loads of FUD comes in. Who knows what it will be? Maybe it's some, I don't want war or anything like that, obviously, but maybe it is some geopolitical escalation, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Maybe, something happens and we have another big dump after hitting 100, and that is the move down to the 200. And if we can get that done earlier on in the year rather than later on in the year, then that is great for me. But I don't want this prolonged, dragged out bear market that lasts a whole year. I don't want that. But it doesn't matter what I want. It's what the market does at the end of the day. Anyway, we have the stock market opening very shortly here in the coming minutes. Looking like the S&P is going to open positive. It's up about 0.4% today going into the open on the futures market. So it'll be interesting to see how Bitcoin and the S&P responds as it launches, or as it opens. Not launches. We're not talking about a new crypto. So all I recommend is that everyone has the weekly chart somewhere, like a saved tab or something like that, and you have the 50-week moving average and you have the 200-week moving average, both set, both in bold, both big, different colors, and you can just check on this every few days and see where we are, see the context behind where we are. But I am short-term bullish. I did open up a long position on Bitcoin when we got that nice little breakout here. And I did share with you guys this chart on my last video, not the one I just uploaded today, but the one before. And I said that I favor the upside move. They were the words I used. And you can see we're getting that bit of an upside move here. And if the S&P has a nice green day today, I wouldn't be surprised if we start battling for that $94,000, $95,000 region. That's the region where we've seen rejections before. You guys remember when we had the whole FOMC? Everyone was super bullish. We had that big rally, and then we came straight back down pretty much hours after the event. So what we're looking for is a nice, high volume, impulsive move above 94, 95 that is sustainable, right? We don't really want it to be news-based because news-based rallies sometimes can be very short-lived, such as the FOMC rally. We want it to be organic, but also impulsive, which maybe that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but I think the two can coexist, right? You can have an organic and an impulsive move. But usually impulsive moves are not organic, right? Usually they are the opposite of that. But yeah, if we're gonna get some nice consecutive daily candles to the upside, that would be great. Looks like that's what we're getting. We will look at some potential altcoin trades a little bit later on in the stream. Obviously, I've given you guys the ones that I'm already in right now. I gave the VIPs them first. IP and XBL, both of them pumped very nicely. If you just use 2x leverage, you would have doubled your money on both of these. So no one's complaining, doubling their money in a sideways market. Another thing I wanted to mention is, as part of the VIP membership, this has been going on for over a month now, you get these weekly market outlook documents. So they go through loads of stuff. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but multiple pages of information about the upcoming week. Key events, the charts, the liquidity levels, all of that. That's all included in the membership. And you can see we've got some key events coming up this week. We have manufacturing index data, not as important, but we have the job openings on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we have the initial jobless claims. And really importantly, on Friday, we have the unemployment rate. So we're going to get some employment data towards the end of the week. And that's going to be very telling when it comes to the Fed and the next move. A lot of people are saying you can write off a rate cut in this month's FOMC. I'm in agreement with that, but you never know, right? You never know. So we'll get through some of the comments in a moment, but I do want to just brush over the Venezuela situation that everyone's been talking about. Now, obviously, we're not going to get into the political side and the motives behind this too much, though I'm sure most people can acknowledge the motives are largely economic. So, you know, when it comes to this situation, I don't personally think it's going to be bad for markets. If it was going to be bad for markets, you'd probably be looking at an S&P 500 open here in the red, which it's not going to do. If anything, I'm going to make the argument that it's good for the US market. Now, obviously, no conflict and none of that is a good thing. But so far in the short term, it seems like this is just been like a special operation. It's been quick, precise, efficient, and it's probably not going to continue. Like, US involvement isn't going to continue. There's always a chance that these things can escalate and get worse. But for the time being, it seems like it's just going to be a short-term thing. And what's been done is done. You know, Maduro is locked up now. And I think it's the vice president right now of Venezuela is kind of presumed to be in charge. But Trump has said that the US will be essentially taking charge of Venezuela for the time being until they find a new leader and they transition effectively. So this isn't a bad thing really for the US market. I don't see how it could be a bad thing unless it obviously escalates into a full-scale conflict, which I doubt is going to happen because that's not within the interests of Trump politically. Trump's whole campaign was no new wars and all of this. So if he does get into a boots-on-the-ground form of conflict, that is going to massively affect the midterm election prospects, which means that he'll essentially be a lame duck and won't be able to get anything done in the second half of his presidency. So I don't think it's going to escalate too much. Maybe it pisses China off a little bit, but I don't think China wants some form of war over Venezuela. And yeah, I just don't see this really escalating too much in the short term when it comes to Venezuela. Though, I think it is a dangerous precedent, what this has set for the whole geopolitical standard. Because you've got a situation now where leaders can just superpower leaders can essentially go into countries and start regime change. And that's not anything new. The US have been doing this for a while. But I found this really interesting. This was on Bloomberg earlier. I was just watching the business news, as I usually do in the morning, just to get a bit of an update of what's going on. And this is what this guy said. So China's Xi and Russia's Putin can use this as their own justification for operations in their regions under an emerging world order that is defined not by rules or international norms, but by strongmen executing operations in accordance with their personal interests, okay? Personal or political interests. So essentially, this has given the green light to other superpowers to instruct regime change or whatever in their own regions, and that's basically what has been going on with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. So this isn't a political show; this is a crypto show. But I do believe going forward in the coming years, we are going to see this new world order, where global superpowers do have more more hardline approaches. And you're seeing that with Trump. He's now talking about Cuba. He's talking about Greenland. And I just think that's really the world we're going into. And eventually, one superpower is going to overstep the mark, and it could lead to a large-scale conflict. So definitely the world is changing in that context. If you would have gone back 10 years, I don't think people would have expected Russia-Ukraine to have happened and, Trump to go into Venezuela. So things are definitely changing. And, this has certainly set a precedent going forward for a changing dynamic. But you could argue this was even the case earlier on. This isn't anything new. You could argue that this started with Russia-Ukraine. You could even argue this goes way back to the whole neocon approach in the Middle East and stuff like that. But either way, I definitely think this event is bigger than some people are making out. Not in terms of its economic impacts. Like its economic impacts, Venezuela is basically would you say third world country? It's borderline on that, right? Certainly not one of the wealthier countries in terms of GDP, very small, per capita, very small. So it's not a wealthy country by any means. But I think the significance of this isn't just about the isolated impact on Venezuela and all of that. I think it's significant because of what it means for the geopolitical landscape going forward. Because Russia and China will definitely be seeing this and thinking maybe they should get involved with some things in their own regions, right? Taiwan comes to mind with China, Ukraine already going on with Russia. So I think you're going to be in a situation where you have all these major powers in their own hemispheres basically just dictating what goes on. The US in the Americas, China in the kind of Asia region, and Russia in Eastern Europe. So certainly interesting stuff. And it all is to do with oil and natural resources. So anyway, Bitcoin seeing a little bit of red as the market has just opened. So yeah, US stock market just opened. Let me just check the S&P. There we go. So US stock market opened green, and we're up about 0.58% on the day for the S&P 500. Russell 2000 up 0.66%. NASDAQ up 0.8%. Let's take a look and see what oil is doing. Oil has opened green. So oil prices are starting to go up. By the way, there is a trend line on oil which has been in play since 2023. Which is something to be aware of. If oil is going to make a bit of an upward move here, then you could expect it to come up to this trend line. Silver up 4% today. Maybe it's going to make another all-time high in the coming weeks. So silver's pumping, gold pumping. Not a surprise when you think about it. Gold usually rallies off geopolitical instability and geopolitical concerns. So that is not a surprise. You know, it's very simple. I mean, you could explain to a 5-year-old gold and Bitcoin and how they move. Gold is your debasement trade for an unpredictable market, an uncertain market. Bitcoin is your debasement trade for a predictable market or a certain market. So when there's uncertainty, when there's big uncertainty, big doubt, big worry, gold will rally based off the debasement of the currency. When there is clear certainty in the market and the economy is strong, Bitcoin will rally based off debasement. So they're both debasement trades, but they're debasement trades in different ways. One is more of a certainty debasement trade. One is more of an uncertainty debasement trade. And you could really explain that to a kid. So, you know, it's not very complex what's going on here. But yeah, Bitcoin had an initial dump, as we usually see on these market opens. I think it's very risky to trade market opens. I've been humbled myself sometimes trading market opens. Usually you think something's going to happen and then the complete opposite kind of ends up happening. But yeah, you know, Bitcoin here seeing a bit of green, 92.7. And we'll get into some potential altcoins. So what I'm liking right now with the alts is altcoins which have been in a prolonged downtrend, meaning multiple months going down, and a breakout from the resistance line. That's what I like. It's a fairly basic trade setup. You know, there's a guy in my Discord saying breakout trades are a very basic way of trading. And he's not wrong. It is very basic, but sometimes simple is best. Sometimes, right? Sometimes these guys with 50 different indicators on their screens, 10 different monitors, 5 laptops, 5 TVs, sometimes it's overkill. In fact, most of the time it's overkill, or all of the time it's overkill. You don't need that many indicators, right? You just need whatever works for you. You need a strategy which works for you. And I'm speaking from experience here. I've overcomplicated things too many times when I've been trading. When you put it to its simplest form, you're trying to spot a change in market sentiment, and you're really trying to, for me, a breakout is what I'm looking for. So I think the best setups on alts are alts which have been in a clear downtrend, which is pretty much all of them, but you're seeing a sign of a breakout. That's what you're looking for. And you want bullish divergences, obviously, as well. But yeah, we had that with IP. We took nice profits on that one. That was a great trade. I think it's still going to go higher, but I was just looking at the amount I was up on IP. I had to take profits, guys. I made too much money too quick. I had to take profits, you know. And maybe that is not me being as logical as possible, but I do have the belief that if you see a huge amount of profits in your account and you feel like you need that money because you made so much, just take profits. Yes, it could go higher, but you made great money. You don't need to hold the trade if you've made great money. So sometimes I'll take profits on a trade, even if it's not theoretically the best point to take profits. On a black and white level, maybe it's not theoretically the best point to take profits. But if I'm really happy with the gains I made, it doesn't matter what the chart's doing. I'm out. I encourage people to sometimes think that way, because, you know, sometimes we can be a bit too black and white. When if you're up, great, just take profits. You're up big. Bank the money, bank the profits. And that's what I did with IP. Anyway, XBL, IP, those are two that I'm currently in. I'm also in another trade, which if you are in the VIP, you can gain access to it. There is a discount code for the VIP if you use the code 2026 at checkout. That is expiring very, very soon. So I do encourage people to use that if you are interested in following my trades. I'll also be in the voice chat shortly after this live stream, so strongly recommend being in that voice chat as well. We'll have a great conversation about the markets. But let's look for some other potential trades. I want you guys to give me some altcoins in the chat. Give me some altcoins in the chat and I'll go through some of them. And we'll look for some potential trade setups. This is the perfect setup I'm looking for. And by the way, I've talked about XPL on loads of live streams and videos I've done. I went on to Crypto Future as a guest, and he asked me what would be the one altcoin you'd have on your radar. And I said XPL. I said, whenever it breaks that trend line, these are my exact words. I said, whenever it breaks that trend line, whenever it breaks that resistance, you want to get in because it's been in a downtrend now for so long. Once it breaks out, it's going to break out and it's going to pump quick. And I've been vindicated on that. People were laughing, saying, why would you buy XPL? It's dumped 90%. Guys, a 90% dump for an altcoin is normal. That's the equivalent of a 20% dump on a stock. Normal. It's healthy. Anyway, Bitcoin seeing some nice green candles here on the 15-minute. I want you guys to post some altcoins in the chat. We'll look at some potential trade setups here. But Bitcoin might push past this resistance here, in which case I think it's pretty much going to be tackling that 94, 95 level, which we've seen some rejections at previously. But let's keep our eye on this BTC chart. What's the promo for the VIP again? It's 2026, just all in numbers, 2026 at checkout. I believe it is expiring this week, I think. So make sure to use it ideally ASAP if you're going to join. It's a huge discount as well that you get when you use that code. Yeah, I've been gone for a while with the live streams. I was doing a bit of traveling. I also took a little bit of a break from crypto, a much needed break. So that's why there's been no live streams, but I am back now in a full-time schedule. Yeah, please do hit up the likes. It helps out a lot. What are you on about? Bro, these alts will pump. Alts will pump when Bitcoin goes to 100K. That is a factual statement. And altcoins are pumping right now. Look, I'm bearish. I'm actually bearish for the market in terms of a macro picture because Bitcoin lost the 50-week moving average. I am bearish. But short term, I'm bullish. And that's something some people can't conceptualize. Some people's freaking brains, they can't understand the idea that you can be bullish and bearish at the same time, but just on different time scales. Do some people not understand that? That you can be bullish and you can be bearish on different time scales? Right now, I'm bearish for the next few months, right? The next 6 months or whatever, I'm bearish until proven otherwise, of course. If we get above the 50, then I'll flip bullish. But right now, I'm bearish because of the damage that's been done to Bitcoin. I believe we're in a bear market. But can I not be bullish short term? Do you have to only be bearish every single day, every single hour, every single minute? You can only be bearish? I've noticed it's a lot of people who can't understand that. They can't get it in their heads. Someone put a comment on my recent video saying, you were so sure that we're in a bear market. It's like, yes, I believe we are in a bear market, but we're having a bear market rally right now. Just like in a bull market, you have bull market dumps. It's never up only. It's never down only. You have rallies, you have dumps. People don't understand that. XCN. Let's take a look at XCN. So it seems like everything's green today. Oil's green, gold's green, silver's green, equities are green, Bitcoin's green. Very, very rare do you see that where everything is up. I mean, I'm sure something's down, but most things are up. So I'm looking for like a clear downtrend, which this has, but there's not as clear of a resistance point as some of the other ones. You know, like that's kind of what I'm looking for, is like a clear as day resistance level. I mean, yeah, there's kind of one here. If you go from this point back in January 25, but I don't know if it's clear enough. I mean, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 candle rejections. I mean, it's I usually like one where there's multiple rejections, right? Multiple rejections. That's usually the setup I like. I mean, you've kind of got some form of wedge or whatever here, but I prefer it when it's more like XBL. I mean, this was the perfect one. I mean, look how many rejections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe you could count those. 5 or 6 rejections. I prefer 5 or 6 to 4, but still, this one could be one to consider, especially if it gets above this trend line here. What else have we got? Yeah, for sure. Geopolitics does affect crypto. I mean, remember the Iran situation? We had crazy volatility back then. Global powers overpowering small nations has been going on for hundreds of years. Nothing new here. That is true. But I think it's certainly increasing right now. The prevalence of it is increasing. More than what it's been in the last few decades, maybe. I think the Russian invasion of Ukraine maybe kickstarted that. I think there's almost like a gentleman's handshake between some of the global powers. Like, you take that, I'll take this. You know, if the US really wanted to stop Russia, they probably would have done it by now. But I think maybe Trump sees it in a way of, I can't do this if I stop this, right? I found it funny as well. Was it Russia, or I think someone out of the Russian government or whatever came out and opposed what Trump did to Venezuela. They strongly opposed it. I was just laughing at that. But international law and all of this, it's all a load of nonsense, I think. You know, can mean one thing to one person, something else to another. When there's resources at play, anything can happen. That means China is going to invade Taiwan for their resources to make AI chips. Yeah, I mean, you've got technological resources too, right? So let's look at Polymarket, actually, what the odds are for China to go into Taiwan. See if they've increased. So we've got one for 2026 and we've got one by 2027. Let's see if they've increased. They've ticked up in the last week. Yeah, so, wow, interesting. So the odds for China to clash with Taiwan were at 13% This is before 2027. Sorry, were they both before 2027? What was I saying? Okay, sorry, one is invade and one is clash. So an invasion versus a military clash. Maybe a military clash could just be in the seas, whereas an invasion is actually trying to take over the country. So obviously there's a difference there. I read that wrong. They're basically both the same thing. One's saying the end of 26, one's saying before 27. So they're both basically the same thing. But that has gone up in its probability here. It's gone up since the ousting of Maduro. It's gone from 13% up to heights of 20%. So it almost doubled. The probability of China and Taiwan clashing almost doubled subsequent to this recent Venezuela situation. So that is something to monitor, just something to look at. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but certainly if you're China, just put yourself in their shoes. You're probably looking at this thinking, well, if the US can do that, why can't we do this? Now, obviously, I think it's a red line. I think the US would probably get involved with the Taiwan thing, but it's going to be interesting to monitor. What to buy today that can pump in the next few days. So we are looking for some potential alts. I have a trade position open right now that I can't share, but that is a VIP exclusive. I'll try and find some others while we're on the live. So how's Sol doing? Sol hasn't moved that much. Sol's setup actually looks quite good. It really does. I mean, bouncing from a golden pocket, you usually do get quite nice. You usually do get quite nice bounces from golden pockets. So surprised it hasn't moved more than it has. It's gone from 116 to 138. I think Sol's probably going to move up quite soon. No one's gone broke taking profits. Wise words. Yeah, let's take a look at H-bar. Don't think H-bar was really doing much last time I checked it. Okay. Yeah, you've got a bit of a breakout. Maybe you got a few points of contact here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. It's a pity I only just saw H-bar here. But maybe it's still early days, right? If this is a legitimate breakout, still maybe early. And, you know, when I trade on the long time frames, I don't really use much leverage, if any. Like, let's say this is a swing trade for me. You know, and I was looking for it to maybe, you know, I haven't looked at the levels too much, but let's just say I was thinking it would come up to this level here. Maybe I'd use 1x, 2x, 3x leverage. I don't use much at all on these longer time frame trades. Sui. Okay, wow. Sui was one of the most beaten up altcoins from this recent drawdown. One of the most beaten up higher caps for sure. And it doesn't really have too much structure either, the Sui chart. Maybe if we look at the 4 hour. I mean, there's not a great deal of structure to it. It's been trading very strangely, Sui. But if it could get above this December high here of 179, then I think it would be quite positive for Sui. But yeah, not too much structure there on Sui. Bitcoin pushing up here, 93.4. My Bitcoin long is printing. Very happy to be making people money right now. Here is my Bitcoin long. My entry price was 91,450. And it has just entered my take profit zone. So I might take some profits out of this trade, but it's been going very well so far. And with the US market opening green, it only adds to the profitability of this trade. So, some people are questioning this trade, saying, why would you open a trade when Bitcoin's at 91K? You should have opened it down here. Well, you can actually make money in the middle, would be my first point. And my second point is I had a breakout level here. I had a trading range that I've been targeting, and it hit my breakout level. We got a confirmed daily close above it, so I entered the trade. I stuck to the plan. Guys, you don't always need to time the bottoms on your trades. You can make money actually waiting for a pump, waiting for that confirmation sometimes is best. Rather than trying to time the absolute bottoms. Sometimes you have a higher probability of a win if you actually wait for a bit of price action to go up first, rather than trying to time the bottom. So it's always about having the probabilities in your favor. But yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to drop lower. I do think Bitcoin's bottom isn't 80K. I just think that's a bit of an arbitrary level for it to bottom at. I think there's enough people still thinking it's going to go lower. And there's enough people who will wait for the sucker rally, which I believe this is what this is, the macro sucker rally, lower high, complacency shoulder, whatever you want to call it. I think there's enough people waiting for this that they're going to take profits once we start getting around that 98, 103K level. Like in between that level, you're going to see some profit taking, I think. Good morning, Archie. Of course, you can still be bullish and bearish on different time frames. Exactly. But some people can't get that in their head. They don't understand it. Some people don't get that. Venezuela owns 14% of the world's silver. Don't they have the most oil reserves, or like underground? Is reserves the right terminology? Maybe it's not. They have the most oil, though, underground. Yeah, reserves is the right phrase. Yeah, because I was thinking, like, does reserves mean it's actually, like, been taken out of the ground? Or does that mean it's not been taken out of the ground? Because the output's super low, right? They don't actually, like, it's not efficient. The oil is more difficult and costly to extract. Yeah, I'm not too knowledgeable on the whole oil thing. I know you got different types of oil. Like is it the thickness? Like the color's different, right? Depending on where it is and the type of oil and everything. I'm not super knowledgeable on all of that, but I just know Venezuela has a huge amount of oil. They have more than Saudi Arabia, which I'm pretty sure is second. I think Venezuela's first, Saudi second. Iran, I think, is pretty high up. That's up there. And even Canada, right? Canada has a lot. They just don't use it much, I don't think. I'm pretty sure there's a decent amount of oil in the highlands of Scotland, right? In the sea. But they don't use it. Or is it I don't know. Probably sound like an idiot here. It's not my field of expertise. Heavy crude. It's harder to refine. Some of these countries don't use that oil as well, right? Because of like the environmental reasons and all of that. They don't want to use it. IP is not moving much? What do you mean? It pumped like 50%. It's cooling off after a massive rally. I took my profits. I made my gains on IP. Surprisingly, I read Somalia has a lot of oil too. Man, some of the African countries have crazy amounts of natural resources. I think that's why China's doing so much in Africa. Just follow the moves of the big players, guys. That's all I'll say. Follow the moves of the big players. Follow what China does. Follow what the US does. Follow what Russia does. And you'll understand what's going on. Render is pumping. Yeah, I was in a render trade, actually. I was in a trade on render. Yeah, render's been one of the other examples of an altcoin which had a nice breakout. Super high daily RSI, though. I think that's the highest has it ever been. Wow, that's the highest RSI ever on render. So you might see a cool off soon. What's the point in taking a long trade if not using leverage? Yeah, a lot of people ask this. I mean, for some people, they like to clearly distinguish the difference between a spot long-term position and a short-term position. So if you have it in a separate account, you can clearly distinguish the difference between your long-term positions and your short-term positions. Also, people like the way of setting a stop loss and all of that on a futures account compared to on a spot account. So I guess those are the main reasons. But you can always do it in spot if you wish. Are you still bullish on Casper? Yeah, long-term I am, but I still think if Bitcoin comes down to its 200-week moving average, as I believe it will at some point, then Casper's going to suffer further. If Bitcoin comes down to the 60s or the 70s, Casper's going to suffer more. But for the short term, I'm bullish. And when I say long term, I mean multiple years down the line, right? So I want to really make it clear when I'm speaking in terms of time frames. Short term, I mean the next few weeks. Medium term, I mean this year. Or midterm, I mean this year. And then long term, I mean multiple years down the line. So long term, I'm bullish on Casper. Short term, I'm bullish on Casper. But midterm, I am probably quite bearish because I still believe we're going to see that move down to at least below 74K. 74K or less, I think we will see on Bitcoin before we see it in new all-time high territory. But I could be wrong. Could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and I will be wrong again. But last couple of weeks, I've been very accurate with my analysis, and I have a 100% hit rate on some of these latest trades. I think my last 5 trades, is it? 4 or 5? So I shorted gold, closed that in really good profits. Longed IP, still in great profits on that. I closed that in great profits. Longed XPL in great profits on that. Longed Bitcoin in great profits on that. And then I longed the small cap altcoin, which is the VIP alert, which I'm still in profits on. So it's been a good little run here, and hopefully it continues into 2026. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the stream here. I do appreciate all of you tuning in. Definitely check out the VIP and Blowfin down below. I'm going to post a link to Blowfin in the chat so everyone can set up an account. There is a current bonus scheme available right now. There's an exclusive campaign in progress, which essentially means you are potentially going to get rewards into your account based off your trading. So if you set up an account, you deposit some money, you could end up getting some, USDT for free, essentially. And I've spoke to a few people who have gotten good rewards, so it's completely free. Potentially, you could benefit from it. So check out Blowfin. I've just posted a link. It's in the pinned comment and the pinned chat. It's the pinned comment in the chat. Bitcoin's making a move up right now, as expected. 93.4K. And I'm expecting that move up to 100K there or thereabouts before we come lower. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go into the Discord very shortly. Going to go into the Discord and speak to the members about the market, probably in about 20 minutes or so. So